"Lieutenant Anditz," she called, voice flat. "Come here." Anxiety thrummed in Anditz's stomach. The Major sounded unsettled. He jogged towards her, leaving Adair and Lamia following behind. He drew close enough to Khan to see her face, which was strangely expressionless, although her eyes looked wet. She had shut off the white noise drone of the open box channel. "Soldier," she said. "We found the source of the Vox signal." She paused. "I don't have the words to tell you what's out there, so you're just going to need to look." Heart thudding in his chest, Anditz moved rapidly past her, up the incline to where he could see downslope onto the plains. For a moment, his brain failed to comprehend the appalling truth. He blinked, trying to understand the reality of what was spread out before him on what had once been Tisane fields. The growing leaves on this side of the city had been crushed months ago under the boots of the troops stationed there, but something else now filled the low plain that, at first glance, had looked like a strange parade running on as far as the eye could see. Horror rose up through Anditz, impaling him as painfully as if it were a blade. Before him were hundreds of Cadians. They stood frozen, trapped upright in a foul pink swamp that now filled the plains, only their torsos protruding at odd, skewered angles. Some were buried to the hip, others to the chest, their faces contorted into grim rictuses. Turned vehicles peppered the morass, looking like toys that had been dropped by a child who had been carelessly playing at soldiers. Rigid, flanged towers of tyrannid matter thrust out of the flooded plains in the distance with moist, semi-translucent cauls hanging from them. Unthinkingly, Anditz's legs carried him closer, down the slope towards the unctuous charnel tide that slapped wetly against the road. The acrid intestinal stench was now almost unbearable. He stumbled forward until he reached the shoreline. Pink scum floated on the hot breath of the wind where the effluent slapped against the land. The nearest body was submerged to the waist, its face bloated and almost unrecognizable as human, although the insignia of the Cadian gate on its shoulder pauldron remained pristine. Anditz stared, unable to process the horror ahead of him. All this time, he had believed that there were other Cadians on this world, still fighting, surviving like he was. He saw now, confronted with this field of the dead, the futility of his hope. There was only death here. Death was all this world had left. A sudden moan escaped the body nearest him, and it swore in shock and rushed desperately towards it. Half aware of Khan shouting a warning from behind him, he gripped the Cadian under the arms and pulled them free from the liquid. He realized, as he was falling backwards, that the soldier was strangely light. Too light. Anditz found himself on the ground, gripping only a torso. The soldier hadn't been half submerged, rather only half there. He rolled aside, leaping up. The remains of the Cadian lay on the ground, face unmoving. It was as if someone had sliced the body at the hips, leaving only a pink seam where the legs had been, an obscene mess of congealed meat and bone slime as the soldier had slowly melted from the feet up. Anditz buried his face in his hands and wept in shame and anger at the horror he felt at the body in front of him. So many dead, so much wasted. Like his regiment, so many of Cadia's sons and daughters made carrion. He felt a firm grip on his shoulders. Then Adair pulled him into a bear hug, wrapping her powerful arms around him and for a moment blocking out the horrors of the dead regiment. When she pulled back, he saw Khan standing close by, face set in a grimace and wet with angry tears. Another groan emanated from the half-body on the ground. Wordlessly, Khan shot the soldier in the head. It burst, the skull soft and pulpy. "They're still alive," Anditz cried. "No, Lieutenant," Khan said. "They can't be. Half a soldier can't live or feel." Anditz looked out over the field of Cadians. He pushed one trembling hand into his jacket to touch the tin of Cadian soil he carried there. "But if they are..." "They're dead," Khan said. "But corpses are strange things. They can make noises. Sometimes they move. You've been on a battlefield, soldier. You know that. You know that in war, there's rarely such a thing as a quiet death. We need to give them the mercy, sir. We can't leave them. The dead need no mercy, soldier. Anditz turned his gaze to her, eyes burning. Please, these are my people. Khan's posture changed. We can't do anything for them, son. This goes on for miles. We don't have the time, and we can't spare the ammo. And you can't get out to them. You've seen what that stuff has done to tanks. What do you think it's going to do to your legs? Anditz made as if to speak. Lieutenant, Khan said firmly. General Felter asked us with our duty. Lieutenant, Khan said firmly. General Velter tasked us with our duty. These were her last orders. We have to keep going. Understand? She searched his lilac eyes. You are going to make peace with your dead, and then I'm going to order you to take us on a route where we can get past this. Understand? Anditz nodded blankly. Khan and Adair stepped back, leaving him at the shore. Anditz gazed out at the army of corpse soldiers. So many Cadians dead, so many wasted, when there were so few left. They looked almost comical, as if emerging from parade in a lake, a waste and an insult to the planet that had forged them. Anditz felt himself come apart, his sense of who he was pulling away like a strip of flesh. Numbly, he felt in his pocket for the tin of Cadian soil. He opened it and tipped it all onto the ground, dropping the battered tin onto the small mound of earth. It no longer mattered.